All right, I want to welcome everybody back for the Post-Secondary Transition Plan Training Section number 2. And so if you didn't get a chance to watch the first video, you should go back and check that out as we kind of set the stage for some of the changes that have been made in SRS to help facilitate and just be responsive to, some of those revisions that have been made to that transition plan. And so I'm really grateful to Minh Vu, the ESUCC, who works with SRS, for being here today, along with Michalla Schartz, ESP 4, 5, 6, 18, regionally working in a big portion of our state with this work, as well as McKayla LaBorde of ESU 3. And so we did some introductions in the previous video. And so Michalla, if you would actually take a moment and give us your introduction, that'd be terrific.
All right. Well, my name is Michalla Schartz, and I am based primarily out of ESU 6, but I am privileged to serve ESUs 4, 5, 6, and 18 as part of the Southeast Region Transition Facilitators Group. There are 6 of us in the state, so even if I'm not your facilitator, there is a facilitator just for you. So make sure you skip to the end of this presentation and find out who's supposed to serve you, because we're all fabulous.
I couldn't agree more with that, Michalla, and you have a pretty great name too, by the way.
Discount, buy one, get one.
Terrific. Well, Josh, thanks for that introduction, and we'll just kind of jump right into our second section of this training. And so, Michayla LaBorde, what are we going to be looking at here broadly as we get into section 2?
Yeah, we're going to just dive right into what the updated SRS post-secondary transition plan section looks like now with some of the revisions. And I know we mentioned earlier, but I think it bears repeating, really transition planning is a process. So this is just one tool that can help lead everyone to better compliance. And really the ultimate goal is supporting the awesome post-secondary planning for our students with disabilities across the state. So with that being said, just a reminder of that graphic of our planning process that really kind of hits the high level points of transition planning, but there's a lot to it. And so that's what we're going to talk about now is really the fields within SRS. And some of them are brand new. You won't have seen any of that. So as an example, the very, very first section is going to talk about the spin. And so, Michayla, this would be a great section. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think that Megan said it earlier. This really is all about the student and getting their input. What are they good at? What are their strengths? What do they prefer to do? We all have the right to choose and to express our interest in advocate for ourselves. What are our interests? What do we like to do? And then what do we need to work on? All of these things help present that comprehensive picture that tells us enough about the student to get them to the next level, because this really is all about successful adult behaviors. And so we'd love to have that, and it goes beyond just signing on the line. Instead, what we want them to know is we took what you think and what you feel into consideration. And that's what this is all about. These tools are there to help the student become independent.
That's awesome. And really, we added this because as part of the compliance review, being able to answer the question, how did you use the student's input? And so really, that it's a great opportunity to document that and have it right there within the IEP so that there's no question that the student was invited to the meeting, the student, there was input and interviews conducted, and this is how we incorporated that input.
And I think it also really fits with the part that Minh showed earlier, where they're talking about the present level. When you have SPIN, an acronym like that is a tool to use as a teacher, you're more thorough. Your IEPs have better quality. Your compliance is better. And then when file reviews come around, the sweat's not quite as bad. We all sweat through file review, but we want to have all the supports you need as an educator out there to do the best you can for our students.
That's awesome. So, Minh, this is what it looks like, and we'll kind of navigate to the live page here in just a bit, but just to cover a couple of sections, this is a screenshot, so that is going to be new and at the very top of the page, because really, like Michayla said, the spin should be incorporated throughout the entire plan. They're really critical. So excited about that. So then the next part, and I'm gonna do jazz hands for this. Like, I'm so excited about it. We now have a designated space on the post-secondary transition plan to list the transition assessments. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a huge step because we have been asking, we've been promoting that everyone do these transition assessments and include the results in the transition plan, but there hasn't ever been a specific field to list those in SRS. So this is an exciting update. So Michayla, here's just some bullet points about transition assessments. Do you have anything you want to point out or add?
Well, I think this is fabulous because as an educator, someone who's got boots on the ground out there, in the classroom with students, I need those reminders. I have many plates spinning, and I love the fact that here's a tool that helps me really be thorough in making sure that I've done this. And the fact that I can find a blank form at the beginning of the year before an IEP is due. This isn't the week before the IEP kind of process. This is a year-long process that really helps students get to know, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? What do you mean I need to be thinking about a goal? And those transition assessments really are essential to helping those students find out what they want to do. It helps us keep track because there's a glorious mechanism built into here that these are going to wrap around and you can remember what you've done, keep track, leave a trail, breadcrumbs, whatever you want to call it. So
I love it. And this is where I'm going to put another plug in for our awesome regional transition facilitators because, folks might be a little bit unsure of what, the greatest, the best transition assessments to give might be. Maybe especially staff members who are now writing them and using assessments for kiddos 14 and over, right? So, there might be some learning here, but this is where your facilitators will come in. They have great suggestions for both informal and formal assessments that you can give that you can really use as the foundation for building a really solid transition plan. So please reach out to them. There's a lot of great opportunities to provide meaningful assessments. Now they do need to require, there's 2 each year. Is that right, Michayla? Oh, more than one.
Yeah, you can have more than 2. So it's a minimum of 2. We're looking for at least 2 assessments per year. And I think the really nice part about this SRS piece is it asks you to record the date, which is super important, and the name of the assessment, a little bit about what it is. And then there's even a place for you to summarize it. And so you have this 1, 2, 3 process that is so easy to complete. And it really reminds you, oh my gosh, I need to plan ahead for this. And it's something that administrators can support and parents can use, and the students themselves are a part of.
Yeah, it's going to be great. There's that summary box right there. And Minh, we're going to have him get into the live version maybe right now and kind of walk us through what that entire section looks like. But really, it's going to have some cool functionality because once you put an assessment in there, Minh, it's going to stick around for the entirety, isn't it? And each IEP, it'll be there.
Yep. Every time you create a new IEP, whether you're creating a fresh one or duplicating, this is tied to the student. So when it gets generated, it's going to have all the previous transition assessments here pre-generated for you. And all you need to do is click a button and you'll add more transition assessment details for that IEP. As you can see, I'll click it 2 times and we've got 4 transition assessments here.
That's fabulous. Minh, really excited about this. I know we're all kind of geeking out a little bit, but this is fantastic. So awesome. Okay, well, so then the next chunk, and this is essential, right? When we talk about post-secondary planning for our students with disabilities, this idea of measurable post-secondary goals is huge. And I think sometimes people get these a little confused with the regular annual IEP goals. So these are very much different, aren't they, Michayla? Absolutely.
One of the things that we hear from file reviews a lot is that post-secondary goals aren't written for that year after a student completes, after they graduate with a diploma, after they complete their special services. And they're not measurable. And there's one, maybe they wrote one, maybe there's not one for all areas. And so I love this part that really breaks it down, that says, yes, you have to have this area. Yes, you have to have this area. And if appropriate, you need independent living. It's really a fabulous function of this tool to help us all get through it in a way that's really thoughtful of the student.
So the required areas are education and training.
Right.
And then we also have a requirement to do an employment post-secondary goal as well. And then the independent living piece, that is where the IEP team needs to determine whether or not that one's appropriate, correct?
Correct. And it's one of the things that when you do some of those assessments, when you're looking at independent living, maybe the traditional definition of independent living, they're just going to need help managing their home, is more broadly defined. Maybe they're going to need help managing finances or getting to class on time or turning in homework. Independent living really has such a broad scope. This tool is going to help us look at that through a much bigger lens. And I think that's going to help. You mentioned some data earlier that only 27% of our students are leaving school in 4 years, and then 88% in the general population. And I really think that this could be one of those wow factors that could help us increase this. So I love this part of SRS.
Yeah. Min, I think we would love to have you kind of walk us through what that looks like on the live site, because there's some cool functionality built in here that help lead to compliance.
Absolutely. So this is the first text box and section of the post-secondary goals. And you would detail what that goal is for that first education and training goal. And then you will show whether or not this goal is new, reviewed, and unchanged from the previous year, or if it's been revised and refined from the previous year. So that first one's education and training. And when you go down, the next thing you're going to see is whether or not the student needs an additional goal in education or training. If they don't, nothing happens. But if you check yes, the exact same thing that we see up here gets generated below. And it's exactly the same. You detail what it is, and then you'll detail whether it's new, reviewed, or revised. Then you've got your goal in employment, and it looks very much the same. There really only needs to be one. And followed by that is the question of whether they need a goal in independent living. If you select no, the IEP will print out with this pre-written message. But if it is deemed necessary to have an independent living goal, when you select yes, you're going to see very much the same thing, but for the goal of independent living.
Yeah, I love this, Min. This is exciting. And, you know, we do have a few samples to share of some post-secondary transition goals. And the reason we wanted to do this, and I know McKayla is going to help us out with this part, but, you know, there has been a lot of confusion. So I think the biggest thing that if I could hit home is these post-secondary goals are actually happening after they leave school. And sometimes that boggles people's minds for sure,
Right.
Especially when we're writing annual IEP goals that we would want to see achieved within a year. But these are very much different. And so you're writing them for either after they graduate from high school or after they reach the maximum age and, you know, complete their services. So McKayla, we have some examples here. But what else would you add about these? Because I know this is a tough one.
It is. And I really see a couple of things that districts typically kind of get caught up in, or teachers get caught up in. Number one, you have to think of exiting high school as getting a signed diploma. It's not just social graduation at the end of senior year. So you're not writing this to attend an 18 to 21-year-old transition program. So don't put that in there. This is after completion of services. So think when they're no longer getting public school services the next year. So the student might be 19, they might be 20, they might be 21. So after graduation with a signed diploma, I or McKayla, you're using first person or third person, and you're going to state what they can do in measurable terms. And so you're really looking at the fact, can someone else walk into the room and see what they're doing? It's a yes or no. That is a little different for post-secondary goals. Indicator 13 doesn't look for a percent. It doesn't look for a number of times completed. It's a yes, they did it, or no, they did not. And so they want to make sure that those elements are there. And they also want to make sure that when they have it in there, they're in all three areas. There's an employment one written, there's an education and or training one written, and then if necessary, they need to have an independent living goal in there. And so when you write those, it's a great idea. You're stuck, you don't know what to do, reach out to your regional transition person. Once you kind of get your mojo going on writing post-secondary goals, this SRS template can really help you and support you and make sure those are done right, because later on you're going to have to connect them to annual goals.
So, Andrew, can you flash up those samples? Yeah, you got it. That's exactly what I was hoping to throw up here. So, the NTACT, the collaborative, so that National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, had some suggestions and some samples. And so, here's a few items right here. And I just want to point out some of the things that McKayla stated and point out where they're at. After graduation from high school. So these are going to happen after high school. Allison will attend a four-year college and take courses in early childhood development. So that you can answer, did Allison do that? Yes or no. It happens in the future or after they graduate. And so, McKayla, does this kind of meet the criteria?
Absolutely. So keep in mind a couple things. High school can include 18 to 21-year-old programming. You're really focusing on after graduation. So when that diploma is signed, here you could you could look at a transcript, you could walk into a college, see if there's a four-year college, see if they're working part-time at the local childcare. And you can also take a look at courses of study later on. Does their support really fit with early childhood? And so you can see, was there a plan in place? And so all of those are really great examples of the three areas. And I know that in this presentation, NTACT is also giving you examples for different types of students, because we have all types of students that need transition services.
Absolutely. On that next example, it's highlighting a student who maybe has more significant needs. And so, Andrew, if you look at that sample, it will give us some suggested post-secondary goals or some samples for Lily. So in Lily's case, her education and training goal might read like this. Upon the completion of special education services, Lily will attend an adult continuing education program for individuals with intensive support needs to maintain and improve communication and self-care skills, right? And then Lily would have an employment goal as well. So in this goal, she's going to obtain a part-time competitive and integrated employment position in a setting that she enjoys, like a coffee shop, restaurant, or public music venue. And then under that independent living skills for Lily, they talk a little bit about the completion of services and then using a system of communication to communicate what she wants and needs. So, I just think that's a great illustration of what those post-secondary goals could look like for a student that has that kind of needs.
Absolutely. Those are fantastic examples. And, you get to be creative on these, because employment looks different for lots of students, and so does independent living. And so feel free to say, I think I need to write this one in here, and then reach out for support, because we're all glad to help you.
That's awesome. Cool. Wonderful. So just a quick highlight. This is new. And so Min talked a little bit about it. But we, on this section, are going to be able to designate, there was a little bit of confusion about how we would know. And McKayla, it looks like your lights turned off there.
I'm unfortunately in a room on an automatic timer, so.
Oh my gosh. You and every teacher in Nebraska.
Oh my gosh. I guess we're saving some pennies here, but.
Oh, I love it. Well, anyways, there's frequently been some confusion about, okay, so if Allison wants to go into early childhood, as the sample showed us earlier, and she knows that in 8th grade, and then it actually doesn't change that. She sticks with it, and that's what she loves. That's what she wants to do. Yeah. We didn't have a great way of saying, well, we did talk about it again. We did more assessments. So that's kind of the purpose of that new section right there.
It is. And I really think that we're going to see kind of that wild swinging pendulum right now, because especially with 14 and 15-year-olds that probably want to be like NBA players, and, you're going to see these really broad goals start, and you're going to see refinement and revision. Maybe they, by the time they're juniors and seniors, they want to be an athletic trainer. And so you see, a definite shift, and you see the assessment, you see the transition activities, and you see the course of study all kind of coming together to really push this down into a place that's like, oh yeah. And you have the students that always want to be an early childhood teacher from day one. And the fact that happens occasionally is fantastic, because again, everything will come together to support it if it's done with that whole graphic that we've shown earlier in mind.
Good. That's awesome. Well, gosh, I cannot thank you enough, McKayla. It has been awesome hearing from you, and you are so right. Amazing facilitators across the state that are ready and willing to support in the area of post-secondary transition. Min, I know we have another section to kind of record, but gosh, I'm just loving all this work. So you and the development team, I mean, I think it's really user friendly. And so that's why I'm just really excited about this. But McKayla, thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody. And make sure that you check out our training section 3 video.